Hi. Now we're going to be going over your Array 4. This is the gluten-associated cross-reactivity foods and food sensitivities. This is an extremely important test to understand what else you may have going on besides gluten. So gluten-associated cross-reactive foods and food sensitivities, what does that mean? It means that over a time frame, if this is gluten, certain foods that are called cross-reactive foods look like gluten. So if we remove gluten, but you eat this, you're never going to get better. And over a time frame, there's major correlation. So for instance, if you have an issue with gluten, it's likely, and by the way, 90% of the population has an issue with gluten, which is called non-celiac gluten sensitivity. But if you have this, there's an 85% chance you have an issue with dairy. 85%. So if you remove the gluten, that's great. But if you keep eating the dairy, it's not great. You're never going to get better. So this test goes down below and shows you the secret foods that may be giving you issue. And this may be why you've tried gluten-free and you felt better for a couple weeks but never fully got better. So the gluten-associated cross-reactive foods and food sensitivities. There's a bunch of these that were tested. And when we break this down and we get these tests back, certain of these foods that are cross-reactive, I tell you to stay away from those foods forever. And then there's a list on the bottom of the foods that are gluten-free. Well, what happens is if there's leaks and holes in the gut that you've never fixed, if you remove the gluten and you remove the dairy, that's great. But you still may be missing rice and corn and soy and yeast, which we'll know now from the tests. But then also what happens, assume you removed the gluten and the dairy and the rice, but you never fixed the gut. You still have those holes. Then we start eating our gluten-free products. These are all the sorghum, aramis, quinoa, all these other gluten-free grains. And then guess what happens? They start coming through, and now guess what? Now we have antibodies against that. So these patients will normally come back and say, you know what? I've been doing gluten and dairy for a while. I felt better for the first 2 or 3 months, but you know what? I'm just not doing well. So it's not just the gluten-free grains that might be giving you issue. It could be something as good as lettuce or lemons or peaches or string beans, which we're going to talk about in the next video on the different foods that we ran on you. So we'll be going over this with you. We'll let you know whether you have this gluten-associated cross-reactive foods and also the non-gluten grains. If it's a gluten-associated cross-reactive food like, hey, I have gluten and hey, I have dairy, I tell you to stay off both of these for life. If you also happen to have rice, that goes on there. Whatever looks like gluten, I tell you to remove it forever because trust me, it's going to give you trouble. Yes, I'm very conservative on this, and yes, I'm a little hardcore on this, but trust me, I've seen the results in patients that follow these recommendations. So I hope you found this informative, and if you have any questions on your Array 4, please let me know.